Today, we have a special guest, Daniel Tinkham. He's a wealth of knowledge in the precious metal sector. Dan, welcome to Ron's Basement.
You can insure your financial assets with just 10% of your net worth in gold or silver. And to me, that's a pretty powerful testament, because people think, oh, I have to put everything into it. And no, you don't. If you're stuck within the system and you're trying to figure out a solution, then the most simple solution is the easiest one. So if your listeners are kind of sitting on the sidelines wondering what should I do, start with 10%. I find that when I worked with clients, I've worked with many thousands of clients over the years. I've closed 10 billion in business for the large firms that I've worked for, and I've found that if you put something in front of someone and you try to look at everything all at once, it becomes so overwhelming and they just shut down and then they don't do anything. But if you can, just like if you're looking at a pizza, boy, I'm really hungry, I want to eat that whole pizza, cut it into slices and eat what you can eat. Chew what you can chew. And that's the same thing with precious metals. For a lot of people, everybody had their first purchase before. Now, granted, I was blessed because I was introduced to numismatics at a very young age. And then I kind of lost it for a while after, in 2011, I cashed everything out. I said, we're done. And I just kind of hunkered down, and I purchased real estate with that at the time. And, but now we're getting back into those same cycles where we're nowhere near, a fad or a bubble or anything. People, to your point, sentiment is really critical. And at this point, I've heard the number in multiple places, 0.5% of Americans own any precious metals at all. And back in the early 80s, it was say 5 to 10% ish. So if we go back to the historical averages, but now you also have to look at the whole global population. We have 9 billion people on planet Earth, and every single one of them needs money in some form. So, I mean, the only way I see most international transactions done is through some type of digital ledger, which, the central banks around the world are full in on that right now.
And to your point, and I've heard that statistic myself, we have 0.5% of the world's financial assets invested in silver, gold, or even I think that includes mining stocks. If we get back to 2%, that would be just 2% would be 4 times as much money coming into the sector. Also, something you pointed out, which I think is important for us to realize, that you talked about the world in general. Other places in the world, China, India, Russia, a lot of other countries. And if you just look at India and China combined, you're talking about a population of 2.8 billion people, which dwarfs the United States. It's like not 8 or 9 times as many people when you combine India and China. And they have a completely different perspective regarding silver and gold than we have here.
Yeah, the Chinese absolutely love silver. Silver has been a Chinese staple for thousands of years, and they're still pretty pissed off that the British took their silver, a couple hundred years ago. And so this is a lot of spiritual warfare, but also from a geopolitical perspective, China's population is declining. Their one-child policy is going to have severe ramifications over the next 30 years, and their neighbor India is going to be by far have the largest population on planet Earth, and the Indians love gold and silver more than any other nation. They have more gold and silver than any other nation. So I think between Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, they could kind of start to see the writing on the wall where, okay, we're going to have to create some kind of system that's going to cater to the Indians, because our populations, it's same thing with Russia, their populations are dwindling. So between Russia and China, just vast openness and space, with a declining and aging population, and Indians love gold and silver. So I mean, they see the writing on the wall, and with Saudi Arabia, they're going to be the ignition that kicks this all off. Because as soon as, and Andy Schechtman's talked about this too, where as soon as Saudi Arabia flips a switch, it's going to happen overnight. I know some people talk about a transition and a certain amount of time. I don't think we have much time, and I think it's going to be a flip of a switch. We're going to wake up on a Monday morning, and Saudi Arabia is going to have announced over the weekend that they're going to either no longer accept dollars, or they're going to accept less in dollars, or they're going to announce timelines to, to get the marketplace prepared, long term.
So you're saying that we may be approaching a cliff as opposed to going down a hill. Is that a safe assessment? That we could be approaching, a cliff
Yeah. Oh,
in terms of the dollar,
absolutely. Yeah, and it'll
as
be an
opposed
L-shaped
to
recovery. So the L goes straight down and then just
yeah.
kind of.
Well, let me
Yeah,
ask you this
the
question.
slow decline was last year. Yeah, and the next one will be a lot worse.
We're on the hill right now, but the hill's heading towards a cliff, I guess is
Yeah.
a good way to say it.
Correct.
If I look back 50 years, you and I are probably roughly the same age. I'm 53. You probably are a little younger than me, but nonetheless.
I'm 34.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're way
Yeah.
younger than me. All right. Well, as an
I'm a
old,
millennial, but I have life experience. I have 5 children.
yeah,
So, I
okay,
have life experience in general.
yeah, and some great work experience as well. Great, industry experience. So, as an old man talking to a young man, uh, if I look back over my life, I was born in 1970. It was 71. Nixon temporarily took the United States off the gold standard. If you look at that 50-year period, let's say 1970 through 2020, and you look at what went on in the world overall, and you may or may not agree with me, but overall, I would say that the United States existed in an environment that was generally conducive, from the value of the dollar, with what developed with the petrodollar, geopolitically during that 50-year period up till 2020. Things were overall pretty good for the United States. Sure, we were spending beyond our means, all that, but nonetheless, during that period, the US dollar lost a significant amount of its value. So if you take that
Mm-hmm.
50-year period and then you cut out 2020 to 2023, and you sit here today with Daniel and Ron talking, and we look out into the next 50 years and kind of where we sit now, do you think the next 50 years are going to be similar to the last 50 years, or do you see things?
It's going to be what I'm calling a bifurcated reality, meaning there's going to be 2 sets of possible realities. One set where people like you and I do vastly better because we have prepared our homes, and then there will be others who have not prepared their homes, and they're gonna fare drastically worse. You can go to any country on planet Earth, and there's wealthy people and people that are highly successful, and then you can go to another neighborhood and they're highly destitute and broke and poor. So I think it's, at the end of the day, it's all what we make of it. And your basement's going to be your basement so long as you live. And you've prepared your home, I've prepared my home, and we're at that critical juncture now where the time to prepare is dwindling dramatically. So generally speaking, I think the country will fare far worse unless we bring back some kind of bimetallic standard, which I think BRICS is going to force us to. They're going to call our bluff, and we're going to have to show our hand, so to speak, and open up Fort Knox and open up all the other gold reserves, and try to come up with a true price discovery. Because right now, COMEX and LBMA, it's opaque. They do not give us price discovery. You have people like Rafi Farber who tried to take one warrant and actually try to cash in, a COMEX security, and it's, it would take an act of God to get that, or you have to be extremely wealthy to be able to get that silver. I mean, what kind of system is that? At the end of the day, I think, I think the paper markets were actually set to probably decline in gold and silver on paper, but I think the people that own physical, like we saw in 2008, like we saw in 2020, the premiums will stay elevated. So silver went from 21 to 8 in 2008, but Eagles were still $20 minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So on paper, you lost wealth, but in your physical, you didn't. So, I would say to really, teach your followers, don't panic on the day-to-day fluctuations in the paper price. Stack physical and just know that they're going to try to crash the price. They start with silver because silver is much more highly manipulated than gold is. So they'll really try to hammer the price of silver. And if you can, find someone who wants to sell their silver at whatever the paper price is, go for it.
Go for it.
But you should know what you're buying, and you want to have enough experience if you're going to try buying on your own. I recommend buying through precious metals dealers or local coin shops until you really get to have a good understanding of, what you're doing.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement. Yeah, there seems to be, and I disagree with this, I go out on a limb, there seems to be this general consensus in the market that if we hit a rough patch, we hit a black swan or a big drawdown in the market, that silver and gold are gonna tank. And I know that's happened in the past, but I tend to think, especially when I look back just to kind of that March, April timeframe when we had the little banking crisis, that the reactions now are much more swift and stronger, and that we didn't really see as much of a drawdown in the silver price, but what we and gold for that matter as well. But what we're seeing now is when there's crisis, an immediate jump in demand, maybe even price, but to your point, also premiums, because we know what happened to premiums during that last, and that if that's a taste of what's to come, if we do hit a crisis, that in some ways it may be too late for a lot of people at that point to get into precious metals.
Yeah, people are funny with precious metals because a lot of folks, especially the paper traders, they buy high and then they sell low and they panic, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But from that standpoint, yeah, you have to dollar cost average. You go back to time tested principles of basic financial planning. Buy on a consistent basis, whether it's biweekly, monthly, once a year, whatever your time frame is. Have a game plan to to get going, and also build relationships with established dealers. Why just have one dealer? You represent Pimbex. I've never tried them before, but I'll certainly buy a bar or two from them. I am a precious metals dealer with Miles Franklin Precious Metals, so I would say try 2 or 3 and then buy from a local coin shop. And just the more you can educate yourself about how each company does business, and what's their track record and the communication. Obviously you've had a fantastic experience with Pimbex to the point where you want to sponsor them on your channel. That's awesome. That's really, at the end of the day, we all have to collectively work together and help each other, because we know this evil is out there trying to fight against us, and we have to work collectively. And being in the pits of precious metals, it's a lot of times it's a thankless job, but at the end of the day, we can see what it's going to be on the other side, and so we continue to do the work that we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I've learned about Pimbex through my Ron's Basement community. A couple of people reached out and said, you should check out Pimbex, and that was months ago. And I did. I made a purchase, and I was very happy. This was long before they, talked about sponsoring my channel. But it is about community. Like, we can learn from each other. And that's one thing I've noticed in the last 1.5 years since I started this channel, is people in the precious metals community are very helpful. They're very nice, and they're also really smart as well. I mean, but we're also, as a general collective, we have our heads pulled out of the sand. So we're dealing with some what can be at times heady things. Like, we need to be there to support each other as well. You said something. I'm going to switch gears back to something you said a little bit ago that I thought was fascinating, because it's something I think that I believe as well. You talked about the United States potentially being almost, for lack of a better way to describe it, forced back onto the gold standard. And I happen to believe that as well. I have this theory, and I talked with Andy Scheckman a couple of weeks ago, and I posed this question to him. It's like, has the world ever really gone off the gold standard? I know Nixon took the United States officially off the gold standard temporarily, but even so, to me, that's like a short-term mirage, right? That like throughout history, overall, gold and silver are the base of money. They are wealth. Any thoughts?
Technically, we've never left the gold or silver standard, because even though we exchange in fiat, it was always redeemable. Well, gold wasn't for a period of time, but it is again. But silver has always been redeemable. So I guess in one way you could say the United States was taken off the gold standard from March 5th of 1933 when FDR confiscated the nation's gold. I believe we went through a bankruptcy at that point, and there's more historical things, to be dug up on that. But I personally think we went through some kind of bankruptcy at that point. They took all the gold, made it illegal for anyone to own more than 5 ounces of gold, unless it was, collectible or, and, certain jewelry, things like that. But at that point, more people had silver. And then January 1st, 1975 was technically when, US citizens were allowed to own gold legally once again. So yeah, technically during that period of time, we didn't have a gold standard, but we still had a silver standard. And anyone who bought silver in the late 60s, saw a nice, 20, 30x return over a, 10-year period to hold it. But yeah, right now we have a gold and silver standard because the government doesn't restrict our ability to exchange our fiat. They don't, there's no restrictions to, sell some crap in your house and that you want to raise some cash for to buy more silver. You're allowed to do that. Now, in a year or two, I don't know what kind of government we're going to have, but I don't like the direction it's going in. And, they're focused on crypto right now and trying to squash the crypto market, which is a whole other conversation. I think, I think blockchain and precious metals have to come together somehow. And so I'm actively building relationships with companies who I believe that can fulfill that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'll plug myself real quick. If anyone wants to visit.
Well, I want to wait 1 second because you can plug yourself. I absolutely want you to do that. But before we do that, you taught me something, which is why I always say, like, we come together, we talk, this idea that the fact that I can right now convert this, right, as an old $2 bill, but if it was a $100 bill, whatever it may be, the fact that I can still right now convert that into silver and gold really, and I hope this makes sense to the viewers because it makes sense to me, but really we still are on a gold and silver standard, right? I mean, until they say, no, you can't convert that for silver and gold, really, this paper is being measured, and hopefully I'm not saying this backward, but it's being measured against gold and silver, right? And I can convert it.
Everything should be valued in ounces as opposed to dollars.
Yeah.
And that'll be, it's like when you try to learn metric from the old system, that's going to be there'll be some kind of adjustment. But if we truly went back to what real money should be and how we're truly supposed to exchange, I might say, hey, Ron, that teddy bear in the back, I'll give you a 1/10 of an ounce of gold for that. It's a measurement. It's something that we can agree on.
What time are you coming by to pick it up, Dan? Sorry.
Yeah. Will you ship it?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I bet that I'm going to vacuum seal it down into about this size for you, buddy. Why don't you share with my audience? You have a fascinating background, kind of where you started and where you are now, and then we'll get into some interesting specifics regarding silver, gold, the precious metals, and your views on how people can protect themselves.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll take your viewers on a journey. We'll go back to when I was 6 years old, and that's really when I became awakened to the world and everything around me. And ever since then, I've just been in what I call intelligence gathering mode. And I've always been a different kid. If you ever talk to anyone who knew me growing up, I was always different. I was unique. I was always trying to predict what was going to happen, to the point where when I was 9, I wanted to be a weatherman. So I went to WHDH in Boston, got to meet Harvey Leonard. My parents really helped me with, just nurturing my kind of unknown wisdom at the time, but I always knew that I was just excited to learn everything that there was about the world. My father is an antiques dealer. He has been in southern New Hampshire here for over 30 years. So when I was a kid, I was rummaging through attics, through basements, finding coin collections. Actually, I'll share a quick story with you. So the most exciting collection I ever found, I was probably 12 or 13, and we were at a house and the guy just brought out an old carton. The Land O'Lakes, they had the old fashioned cartons with the old box. And I was just so excited to get through it. And I started digging through it, and Morgan dollars, CC Morgan dollars, peace dollars. I mean, it was just incredible. But at the time, people were just giving silver away. It was $4 or $5 an ounce. It had been in a 20-year bear run, bear decline. and I cherished that collection for years. But I've always been one to buy and sell, so I've always been kind of thrifty and always wanting to learn how to make a buck. So at a very early age, I kind of figured out the time value of money as well, and the value of working really hard. I think probably one of the talk to a lot of smart people, and I try to be the dumbest person in the room, because then I can try to gain some additional wisdom. And probably some of the smartest wisdom I've heard is, when you're really young, you should be working 80 to 100 hours a week. And the thought there is you can actually control your time a lot more effectively. So if I can work 80 hours a week for 10 years, that's like I did 20 years worth of work in only 10. And then you can buy your time on the back end. So a lot of highly successful people I see do that. But where does that fit into gold and silver? So essentially our money's been stolen from us. And I left the securities business because I wanted to try to teach people about what real money is. And people within the industry that I came from have no concept of that. And that's it's no one's fault. It starts within the education system. They should start teaching kids about money and precious metals, and how to write a check and things like that. That should be happening at a very early age, slowly introducing those concepts. And then as time goes, I think more and more students would catch on, and then kids teach other kids, kind of thing.
Let me interject something that
Sure.
I just thought of as you were speaking. Everybody, it's safe to say, in the United States and the world has to deal with money, right? We all have to deal with money.
Everyone. Yep.
I have twin 11-year-old daughters that go to the local public school. And I think it's safe to say that by the time they get through the public school system, they will have learned more about music than they have about money. Do you think that's and that's pretty sad? I mean, nothing against music. Music's great, but the system is not set up to educate people on how to manage money. And it's something, look, I actually work at a little music school at night. So, but I, in my life, I don't have to really know anything about music to function, but musicians have to know a lot about money to function.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
go ahead.
A lot of it, I mean, we have two hemispheres of our brain, our left and our right, and each one controls certain aspects. So, the right side of our brain is the creative aspect, things like that. And then our left side of the brain is more kind of the rote memorization. And the schools don't really do a good job at blending the two. It's either all one or all another. So when I was in high school, I tended to focus more on business classes, because that was the area that I knew I wanted to go in. I wasn't interested in music or art or anything like that. But, students, as they grow, go through middle school, through high school, they're trying to find what they're going to do. And, at the end of the day, the schools, are only going to do so much. As parents, we have to instill wisdom in our kids, teach them solid foundations. I'm a believer in in Jesus. So at the end of the day, he's my compass. But I think every person should have a form of relationship with God in one way, shape, or form. Because if you, in a biblical sense, gold and silver has been around for many thousands of years. And the wisdom that our ancestors have instilled in us through those books, through those teachings, are still alive today. And it's just, it's been forgotten in a lot of ways. But we can each be stewards of our own family's wealth, and we can help guide the next generation. I was talking to my wife this morning, and I'm just so concerned for my children, and then someday their children, and what kind of world do we want to leave our kids. And I know I keep talking about starting at a young age, but it, God's really putting it on my heart to say, like, this is all about the children. Like, yes, we can all learn and instill wisdom within ourselves, but ultimately that only goes so far. We have to, whether whoever you have an influence in someone's life, you might be the only person whoever shows them a silver dollar and say, look at this, and they're gonna, their eyes are gonna light up. I love having pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters to be able to give to people, to say, look, this is what the money used to be, and now they're trying to put it on a digital ledger, which I think there's really nothing that's going to stop the world from going to a digital ledger system. That's going to happen no matter what. But I think if we can adjust, but also create our own realities, we can still exist within the system. We do now. but that, the root, the deepest roots. So if you look at how a tree grows, its roots go down very deep. And at the deepest part of our roots is, well, God, but, right next to God, he wants us to do good on this earth, and precious
Mhm.
metals, gold and silver is right there, as a strong foundation. Because when the tide comes in and it's high tide and a hurricane's coming through, I know at the end of the day, precious metals will still be there on the other side, whatever that system is. And, what I'm really here to teach my followers, other patriots, people willing to listen, is that the system is dying. It's been
Mhm.
dying. You know that. I know that. People like Andy Scheckman know that. But there's a lot of people out there that just live day to day, and they can't see the forest through the trees because of how the system is. And so we're here to say, look, your retirement is at risk. Even your brokerage accounts are at risk. I shared a book recently that I actually just saw Bill Holter share this morning in his, he's at a WordPress that goes out from time to time. And I was really excited to see that he's sharing about the book called The Great Taking. And I'll share it with you. I've been sharing it for about a month privately, and I saw him share it this morning. I was like, okay, wow, this is really taking control. And it's a small chance, but there is I try to look for bottlenecks within the system that could cause black swan events. And it's a very unforgiving place to be, because there's so many different places you can look, and there's so many rabbit holes. Um, but I genuinely think that there is potentially a 10% chance of what's called the DTCC, the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, which basically
Mhm.
holds all the stocks in the world. If they file bankruptcy, that's going to basically bail in the entire system, and their secured creditors, which are the richest families in the world, will basically take control of all the stocks. Because if you have a Fidelity, or if you have a Schwab, or if you have a Vanguard, and I say this with full disclosure, I worked at Fidelity for 5.5 years. I was a 2-time President Circle winner. I'm not just your every run of the mill kind of person, and I could not have seen this when I was working there. But the system is severely at risk. They don't hold
Yeah.
physical securities anymore. Everything's rehypothecated. Um, to hedge funds and other groups that are continually just trading these digital instruments. But what happens if the music stops? And that's really the key
Yep.
test of, do you have a seat? And precious metals, you only need 10% in precious metals of your total investable assets to protect all your wealth.
Tell my viewers how they can get, and tell them a little bit about what you do and how they
Mhm.
can get in touch with you if they want more information.
Yeah, absolutely. So I created something that I'm calling the hard asset movement. And to me, this is, if I was trying to help my family or close friends or whatnot, I put myself in their shoes as to how, I would want help. And being in the position of authority where I have gone through the system, I can understand the technicalities and the details of different things. Again, it's given by God, because I started at a young age, and I've been in constant learning mode over the past, 25 or so years. And to me, it just, it resonates with the community. And it's amazing that we can all come together collectively and agree on so many things that, that then, it's led by God. So for me, my hard asset list, so if you're looking at your portfolio, look at silver first. And that's number one. You have to own silver. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So a good chunk of it should be held in physical form. Prepare your house, buy a good safe, try to bolt it into a foundation if you can. Or if there's no other options there, look at certain digital options. I'm going to be creating a partnership with a company called 7K. We're still in the works right now. Another alternative is Kinesis. But I'm gonna go the 7K route, and they're offering a digital wallet for those people who don't have the means. They do vaulted storage right in Idaho. It's tax free. Gold. So you can hold your physical gold, or you can hold it in a storage facility, but you should not be holding it as an ETF. You should not be holding it, in a futures contract or as a derivative contract. All of the swaps and futures, I think there's going to be within the next couple of years. I think force majeure will be called on everything. And for what the term force majeure means is basically they're going to settle you in fiat terms, and you won't actually be able to get what you thought you owned. And there's all these asset managers who are in a position where they tell their clients that they have exposure. And yes, they're technically correct, but you also have to look at the wordsmithing of everything's a contract now. So yes, they have exposure, but do they have segregated, allocated positions in physical gold and silver? And they won't be able to answer it, or the answer will be no in practically most cases, unless you have a wealth manager with a lot of, wealth. And then, the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys, they might custody physical for you, but you got to be pretty wealthy. From the next tier is energy. So I work in private equity for an oil, gas, and water company. So we're raising capital. We've already raised 100 million. We're raising another 100 million by year end, and that project goes towards focusing on domestic energy. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to have to rely on my energy independence from a foreign nation that may look at us as an enemy. And they may not look at me as an enemy, but they're going to look at our government as an enemy, and rightfully so. The government is, has been tyrannical for a long time, but they've gotten especially tyrannical here over the last few years. So, protecting yourself with domestic energy, to me, it was really my patriotic duty to say, all right, I'm leaving the securities world. I'm going to go work in oil, gas, and water. And I live in New Hampshire, so I'm like the strangest person to be working for a Texas oil company. But just again, fate had it set up that way, and so I'm super excited to be able to raise capital for them. And if you want information on that, I work with only accredited investors on that particular piece. There's a lot of government rules. Basically, if you don't have $1 million in net worth, the government says you're not allowed to invest in it. So in a way, government does really control more than people think from that aspect. And then my next tier would be real estate, or high quality or income producing land. And most people think of income producing as residential or commercial, and yes, that is important. However, in this next turn, if your income can come from food production, your income will dramatically increase. So the more land you have, and you can turn it into something that can generate income, those people will be, very rewarded. So I'm going to be partnering up with a company that offers food sustainability. They can come in and do consulting, whether you live in Alaska, New Hampshire, Florida. They'll come in and say, all right, based on your land, this is what you should grow, and they can help build gardens, aquaponics, and greenhouses. And so for me, that really resonates with a lot of people who say, yeah, you know what, I think I am in a position where I could be the local grocery store for people, and then I also get income, and that income could be silver. I built an apartment for my parents. As the oldest son, I felt it was my obligation to take care of them, and they were at a point where they needed some help. So I built an apartment, and some months my landlord pays me in silver, which is great. And some months he doesn't, and I can go exchange it. But there may come a day where you only want to accept silver or gold as form of payment, and so we might be coming to those days. And then also I wanted to really just educate some of your high net worth followers. If you have more than 250,000 in a bank, you're at risk. You have what's called counterparty risk. But if you have too much in a brokerage account, you're also at risk. And so, what I'm teaching my clients is, look at Treasury Direct. I don't earn anything to tell you about it, but it's where the super high net worth individuals park their cash, because it eliminates counterparty risk. So if a bank fails, or if a broker dealer fails, Treasury Direct. So the United States Treasury was formed in 1789. It was one of the first four, governmental organizations. So it's not going anywhere. If anything, I'm a big proponent of eliminating through decommissioning the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Reserve simultaneously. They both came into this world together. They both should die together. They've outlived their usefulness, and Treasury should be the one that effectively functions most things moving forward. So if you have a lot of excess cash that you're waiting and you don't want to put it in precious metals, Treasury bills, are a good kind of temporary option. But even then, at some point, our government is printing so much money. There's $1 trillion a year in rising just in interest alone. So the system will work for a little while, but money doesn't go to money heaven to die. It just goes into someone else's pocket. So, and the biggest benefactors of that transfer of wealth is at an unknown time, but it's going to go to precious metals holders mostly, but then it'll go to energy holders. It'll go to food, people that own food. So there'll be a trickle down effect from that standpoint. But to really prepare those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Precious metals, energy, food, like that.
And your
Pretty simple.
website is well.
Oh yeah, yep. So it's www.danieltinkham.com. So that's DanielTinkham.com, and you can contact me there. And I have a little bio. I also put up videos. So as soon as this video goes on YouTube, I'll post it there. So it's kind of a repository for all of my interviews, and I also have a blog that I'll be doing 1 to 2 times a month on there. And I have a blog post that I put up a couple weeks ago that's still highly relevant. And so yeah, that's the best way to connect with me. If you're interested in energy, or if you're interested in precious metals, this is Ron's Basement. So you got to support Pimbex. But if you want an alternative, Miles Franklin too. I know you just had Andy on a few days ago, and he's a wealth of knowledge. And I really, it took me a long time to really settle in on who I wanted to work with. I either tend to make decisions extremely rapidly or extremely slow. And in this case, I wanted to really study, who I wanted to do business with long term. And, for me, it was we all might end up being precious metals dealers at one point. You might have a follower now who says, yeah, you know what? I want to do that too. How can I help teach my family and my friends how to stack precious metals? And, at the end of the day, it's if you want to, earn a little bit extra income at the same time, and you're also teaching people and helping people exit the system. We need, you and I are 2 people, but we need a lot more people getting out there and teaching people, because we could, our tentacles only extend out so much, but our followers and people that are listening to this, they can reach way more people. So, I would say everybody should take it upon themselves to have their own personal mission, have their own personal vision, stick to a plan, and then have, set different goals, set short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. And then, just start. It takes 10,000 hours to become a master, but it takes a lifetime of loving something to really truly understand the depths of, what God wants to teach us all. And he wants to teach us all different things because we all have different messages to deliver. And so if you feel compelled to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to support Pimbex and Miles Franklin and, our different projects, it's, again, the more interviews we can do like this, then we can just continue to build that, build that community. And that's what I'm really doing moving forward.
Sounds good. And I will put a link to Daniel's website in the description of this video. On behalf of all the viewers, it's been a very interesting conversation, a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again in the basement.
Absolutely. Likewise. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.